Hello, welcome to Cube Puzzle Fun. This is a YouTube channel where we look for the easiest and easiest to explain way to do the different twisty puzzles and then explain that way to you. Today we are looking at the 4x4 Rubik's Cube or twisty puzzle cube. 4 columns this way, 4 rows this way. It's a 4x4x4, 4 squares in 3 different dimensions. And I'm going to scramble this up and show us the first few steps. Alright, 4x4 cube is nice and scrambled. We are going to break this solution down into 3 phases, and the 3 phases are each going to have a bunch of steps. When we are learning how to solve the 3x3 cube, I just break it down into 4 simple steps. With a 4x4 cube, it's a bit more complicated, and also I just like to make sure that we figure out a way to solve it that everybody can understand, no matter whether you are an absolute beginner or not, or whether you just need a little bit of help. If we break it down into a whole bunch of tiny little steps, that makes it so that everybody can be on the same page. There are definite benefits to starting with the same color every time. If you're going for speed, then starting with the same color every time can definitely help you get faster quicker. But here on Cube Puzzle Fun, we're mostly just cubing for fun. And when you start with different colors all the time, it sort of makes it so that you get a deeper understanding of what you're doing with the cube. And I like that. I'm going to start with orange. I see a pair of oranges right here in one center. We are going to, phase 1 is just all about getting all of our centers solved. We are going to solve centers on all 6 sides of the cube. I see a pair of oranges already, and so I am going to find the other 2 inner oranges. Here is one, and somewhere along the cube there is another. It's on the underside, and it's also all 4 of these oranges I find are in the exact same lane. So we are not going to be able to just slide them all up together, because they are all on the left hemisphere of the cube. So what I am thinking is I would like to go down on the underside and take this one orange from the left hemisphere and rotate this whole slice over to the right hemisphere so that I can bring this orange up to join this orange and make a pair. And also when I move this whole right hemisphere, that is going to not affect the 2 oranges that we already have together in the first place. So here is a way that I can make a pairing of oranges, and it doesn't even disrupt the pairing that I already have. And then when I want to slide these 2 together, all I would really do is just move these so that they are both in the right lane over here, and then I can slide them up and join these 2. Now when people are learning the 4x4, a lot of people will instinctively go to just move the inner slice. That's fine, but when we are just on this first stage of solving the first inner centers, it really doesn't matter if you, like, whatever you do with this outer slice really doesn't affect anything. So we can move these both together, and the outside can move all over the place, and it really doesn't affect the centers. So that is step 1 of phase 1, is just getting one center completed. Now that you have one center completed, we need step 2 is figuring out which color goes on the opposite side. This is a 4x4 cube, and it, as such, Any even number cube, like a 4x4 cube or a 6x6x6 cube, or any even number, does not have an actual centerpiece. Like a 3x3 cube has a centerpiece, and so that tells you that if this centerpiece is orange, you need to get orange pieces around it. If you have a 5x5 cube, that's an odd number. And if you have, like, this centerpiece is blue, then you have to get blue around it. Here, on a 4x4, there's no center. So you can actually put these centers in the wrong place. That was a huge frustration for me when I was first learning how to do a 4x4, is I would get centers solved, but unknowingly I would have them solved in the wrong place. So the way that you can tell which centers need to go in what place is by using corners to do a corner check. So this is step 2 of figuring out which color goes on the opposite side. If you already know what color goes on the opposite side from doing other cube puzzles, and you know that the opposite of orange is red, you don't need this step. But if you do need this step, what you do is you look at what color you've solved. You find the 4 corners. There are 8 corners on a cube. You find the 4 corners that do have that color, and I'm going to also move them all up to one side. You don't need to move them all up to one side, but you do need to find out which 4 corners have that color. And when you find out which 4 corners have that color, the other 4 corners, now all the oranges are up top here, the other 4 corners, there will be one color that they all have in common. So you find the 4 corners that do not have orange if you solved orange first, and you see what color they all have in common. This has red, green, yellow. This has red, yellow, blue. This has red, white, and blue. And this has red, white, and green. So the color that those all 4 have in common is red. 2 of them have green, 2 of them have white, 2 of them have yellow, 2 of them have blue, but all 4 of them have red. So this center needs to be red. Sometimes you will find that a red or 2 reds or something will already be up here. That will give you a bit of a head start. But in our case, we have 0 reds up here. So since we already solved the orange on the opposite side, that tells us that all 4 of our reds are going to be along the center here somewhere. Here's one, here's another, and here are the other 2. So I am going to, this is one that already has 2 and they are already paired, so I am going to move them either to the upper hemisphere or the lower hemisphere. Doesn't really matter so much, but just get them so that they are facing side to side, and then we can move this lower hemisphere around and see if any other reds come up. They do not, so let's switch it around and put the red pair on the lower hemisphere and move the top around and see if reds come up. There's one, and there's the other. Let's see what we can do to pair these 2 together and then bring them back over to here. This red is in the upper right, and this red is in the upper left. So since I'm going to rotate this over to here, in order to pair these 2 together, I need this red to be in the lower lane, so that, and I need it also to be on the left side so that it will pair with the other one that's on the left side. I need it to be in the lower lane so that it doesn't get moved when I move this upper hemisphere, and then I need it to be on the left side so that those 2 will come together when I bring this hemisphere over. Now all I need to do is put these reds back in the upper hemisphere so that I can slide it back over and pair it with these two. And now I have the red centers solved, but I have them solved in the wrong place because here is orange, and we determined that we needed the reds solved on the opposite side of orange, and that would be up here and not down here. So we need to move these reds up to the top, but we have a problem in that every time we move some reds up there, these oranges get moved. We can't seem to move the reds up to the top without displacing the oranges on the bottom. So what we're going to do for that is we are going to move some reds up to the top and then change lanes. Move them from the left hemisphere over to the right hemisphere so that we can put that orange back down on the bottom where it goes, and now that red stays up there. And now we have another red to get up there. So what would happen if we move this red over and try to do the same thing? It seems logically like that is what you would want to do and that would work, but actually if we move it up and to join the reds, it displaces the orange, and if we rotate this around and then bring it back down to bring the oranges back down to the bottom, it pulls the reds back down again. That's no good. What you actually need to do is sort of counterintuitive, but you need to put the reds in the same lane. You need to put them both on the right hemisphere so that when you push this red up to the top, it will push this red over onto the opposite side. Now you can move these reds over to the left hemisphere, and now when you bring this orange back down to the bottom, it's going to bring that red from the other side up to the top. And let's look at what that looks like. Just go around the cube. Here's reds on the left hemisphere, reds on the right hemisphere, orange on the left hemisphere, orange on the right hemisphere. That's what we want so that we can bring this down, and now we have a completed step 3. The step 2, I don't even know if I mentioned what step 2 was, but step 2 was just the color check of finding the 4 red corners and then figuring out which color they had so that you could see which color you're solving on here, and then step 3 was actually solving it. So now at the conclusion of step 3 we have one center completely solved, and then we have the correct opposite color solved on the opposite side of the cube. And the reason why I advocate for doing those first 3 steps and getting 2 centers solved on 2 opposite sides from each other on the cube is that now we can stop having to think in 3 dimensions for a minute, and we can just slide things left and right. All of our slides can be accomplished just going left and right, and we don't have to think up and down anymore to get the rest of phase 1 done and get all 6 centers solved. Believe it or not, we are very, very close to being done with phase 1, even though we only have 2 of the 6 sides completed. It doesn't take a whole lot of doing to get the other 4 sides solved, but I am unfortunately up against my 15-minute time limit. So just click over here and you will see the rest of this video on phase 1, and we will get all 6 of these centers solved. So see you over there.